On today's episode of Translate Relate, and it's the basics of transactional analysis, we are talking about what is TA, transactional analysis, where did it come from, and the three core principles. So I will acknowledge that I have got notes on my little card as well. I want to acknowledge that. You might see me like scribbling, tearing them up and just throwing them on the floor as I've like gone through, because my memory is like an absolute sieve. And I was saying to Becky before, I feel like we started this podcast thinking, oh yeah, let's do all this stuff about this framework that we know a lot about and we really enjoy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm being tested now.
Do I know anything?
I know. But I can't even spell it.
But listen, if these cards are like good enough for the presenters of like, what's a breakfast show? BBC Breakfast.
Yeah.
And they'll have the words on their little screen, then it's good enough for us.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that I cover everything. And there's no stress.
No pressure.
And there's no pressure because it is on here. And I need to try and stop starting my sentence with so.
Okay.
I'm really going to try and do that.
It's going to be a little personal challenge for you through the podcast.
Yeah. Every time I say so, please emoji a thumbs down. No, don't do that. Don't do that because it might feel really bad. Thumbs up. She said it again.
Or a laugh.
Yes, laugh.
A laughing one.
Yeah. We'll do
Make us look really funny.
Okay. Transactional analysis. Where did it come from? Who started it? Eric Berne, 1950s. He was in the Army Medical Corps. He doing psychoanalyst and psychiatry he was training to be. He's Canadian. And I think one of the things that we must discuss when we start talking about TA is the time when it started.
Absolutely.
In the 1950s. We're closer to the 2050s than we are the 1950s. And I think that a lot of criticism that it gets. I'm back now. Sorry, one of the batteries of the camera. I don't want to touch anything. I broke a camera. I keep on tipping this up. It's all gone absolute Pete Tong. So, where was I? That's the first smiley emoji.
So, criticism of the theory.
Criticism, yeah. And I think, so I was looking, I said again, I was looking yesterday at like life in the 1950s and just to get an idea of what was happening then and what images. Have a look, and it really helps to have an idea of thinking about, from Berne's perspective, what was going on. What types of communication was available? Where were people getting the information from? Who was in charge of things? Who had the biggest say-so? What was the fashion like and the music like? It's just a completely different world. And the reason why I say that is because that is one of the biggest criticisms, because it's not for this time. It's written, and at some stages it feels like a different language because it wasn't today's work. And it would be completely different if it was written today. I say completely different. The principles would be the same, but the language and examples would be different.
Can I throw something in about the difference?
Absolutely.
This isn't about TA, but just to sort of help bring things into perspective about the difference in time from the 50s to now. So both my parents were born in the 1950s, early 50s. And, we still talk now about how they had one outside shared toilet for like 6 houses on the street.
Oh,
and
gosh.
Like each 6 houses would share the one toilet, and that you would regularly go out and the toilet would be frozen, or you'd open the door and a rat had run out, or my mum talks about like a sink of water being left in the bathroom overnight in the inside the house, and you would wake up and that sink of water was frozen. And so life then was just completely different to what we know now. Now how many houses are even built with just one toilet anymore? Never mind the thought of one, it being outside, or you're having to share it with all your neighbours.
We've got 2 in our house. It's the first time we've ever had a downstairs toilet. We feel very privileged right now.
But that's the point, right? And so, but then a lot of theories were written a long time ago. Really, when you look into it, a lot of Berne's influences were from that same time period as well.
And I like it. I like it. It still feels New Kid on the Block. It's not something that I can't think about when I was in college learning about, like a framework of psychology. I can't think about whenever it was brought up. It was only when I had counselling that I learned about TA. And at the time, and I think what I secretly quite like about it was that it was pretty radical for the time, because Berne wanted to empower the patient, because at the time there was an unbalance between the relationship of the client, patient, and the therapist, and it was very prescriptive. And it wasn't you can do this, and you can get a grasp of this, and you can take control of this. And I think that's what I really, and you can choose which bits you take on board and which bits you don't like. But then if you only want to pick and mix it, then you also face those consequences. So if I want to keep on, and we'll talk about games in a later one, but if I want to keep on getting involved in games, well, then I have to face the consequence of the heartbreak and the heartache and the stress and the hassle and the drama of getting involved in those games.
Absolutely.
So I really like it. I'm completely sold on it.
I'm in.
Yeah, I'm in. In fact, I'm doing a whole podcast about it. That's how deep I'm in now. And I love the idea of empowering the people who are coming to use TA, coming to use, I guess, the services of Eric Berne at the time, thinking to my nursing career of always trying to empower the patient and promoting independence. Because, do you know what? I might be able to pass you that glass of water today, but who's going to pass it to you when you're at home? So let's work on how can we build you up to getting your own glass of water? Or do we need to look at the different types of furniture that's in your home? Or do we need to look at maybe not having a glass, having something with a bigger handle or something like that? So for me, the values are very much aligned with what I was trained to do as a nurse. And as well, bringing back to my nursing, what I love about it is, and you're going to get this right because I'm thinking about it too much, he wanted a simplistic framework that wasn't simplistic language. Yes, that was it.
So his writings were certainly, as much as for us to read them now can sometimes be a bit like, whoa, like a lot of that, as you say, is to do with the fact it was written in a different time. But if we were to pick up the work of other psychotherapists working in the 1950s or before Berne, I don't think I'd get past like the first 2 pages, because the language used is not accessible to someone who is not a psychotherapist. So Berne wanted to change that, and this was part of the being radical at that time, that he wanted to make it accessible to other people. So he used simplistic language. The framework itself isn't simple, but he used language that the general population are much more comfortable with.
And bringing that back to my nurse training, again, and this is why I think my values are very much aligned with TA, is because I would see doctors and some nurses would use, and it almost felt intentional, that they would use really long words so that people didn't understand what they were saying, so it would elevate their importance. And I used to see people talking to patients in that way, thinking, and they would just be like glazed over.
Yeah, of course.
With a big smile on the face, like, I think, why? You don't have to complicate it. Like, speak in their language.
Tell them the medical term, but then actually explain what does that actually mean for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And with your engineering background, there was completely off topic now, but there was a sister in charge, matron on A&E. Are the males called matrons? He had that uniform. I don't know what the male version is. But anyway, he was an engineer. So for him, I remember him talking to me about the mechanics of injury. And he uses engineering like this does this and this moves that. And it was just so simple. It was quite a complex statement that he was saying, but he made it so simple so that it was accessible to me understandable for me, and that I didn't feel excluded and not part of this language. And I think TA does that, really breaking it down. So I love that. And again, for those reasons aligned with the doctor's language jargon, it's about avoiding that. And you don't need that formal education. You can pick it up, dip your toe in. You can probably be a doctor in it, I'm sure. We met on a master's, but I'm sure there's higher levels.
Something. I'm sure you'd be able to do something. Well, we know that you can go on to be a supervisor or a teacher, you know, within TA, certainly. But yeah, I wonder if, I'm sure there'll be some kind of qualification in the wider world around TA.
Yeah, so that's my introduction to Berne. I can rip my post-it notes off now.
Yeah, get rid of that
the
now.
pressure can go.
She hands over to me. You know, so TA then at its core it's a theory of relationships and understanding the way that humans communicate with each other, that we build relationships, and yeah, that's essentially what it is. And the part that I'm now going to focus on are the 3 core principles of TA. And this for me is the part that made me fall in love with TA. Like, I remember hearing these and being like, oh, like that feeling of sort of like a little bit like peace, like I'm feeling like I'm at home now. Like, that just makes sense to me. And these 3 core principles underpin all the other aspects of TA that we will go on to discuss in the future episodes. And, you know, you'll hear us referring back to these 3 core things, or when things go wrong, it's because we've forgotten one of these 3 core principles. So what are they? So the first, I'm okay, you're okay. The second, we can all think. And then finally, people decide their own destiny and they can change that decision at any point. So what does that actually mean? I'm okay, you're okay. In TA, we talk a lot about okayness. It's a phrase that is used a lot, and it's the idea that every human being has value. I respect and value myself. I respect and value you. And Berne famously said, we're all born princes and the civilizing process makes us frogs. And I love that metaphor, that idea that we're all born okay. But as we go through life, we sort of put on all these froggy layers. But underneath it all, underneath all those layers, we're still okay. We're still those princes and princesses. Because this is the other thing, like that language, you know, Berne would probably have used, a different metaphor. It's often written in the male. What's the word I'm looking for? He often uses
Gender.
Yeah, gender. Yeah, but I was trying to think of another word, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's often written.
We don't do jargon here.
We don't do jargon. Yeah. What am I doing? Trying to be clever, thinking of the big word. This is what we want to avoid.
Tell us in the comments below, please.
So I'm okay, you're okay. The second core principle, this idea that we can all think. So with the exception of those with extremely critical brain damage, we can all think for ourselves. What I love about this is that there is so much that happens in our lives and in the world around us that we can't control, right? But we always have the ability to control the way that we think about things and the way that then we choose to respond to all these things that are going on around us. And then finally, that people decide their own destiny and they can change that decision at any point. Like, to me, that's a real wow. Wow. Because when we're small, when we are mini people, I always refer to children as mini people. So when we are mini people, we learn and we adapt to ways of thinking, being and doing that allow us to survive in our environment as we're growing up. But what happens is we carry on those behaviours as we become adults. And sometimes those ways of thinking, being and doing are not actually useful to us anymore. They were really useful at one point, but actually those things that we're doing mean that we're getting in our own way, or that we form really unhealthy relationships, or we are not able to have really open, meaningful communication. And so the idea that we can relearn and that we can then do differently, to me, is what makes TA such an empowering and hopeful theory.
And scary at the same time.
So scary.
Because now the decisions, once you have the awareness, like, you get to decide, and we're not now saying, look what you made me do. It's, ooh,
yeah,
I made this decision.
And, you know, that's something that comes up a lot for me in coaching conversations, that idea of that no one can actually make you think or feel or do anything. They can try, and sometimes people try really hard. Now, people often struggle to get their head around that when we're looking at it from a negative point of view. He made me feel really bad. But let's flip that on its head. So I might have days where I'm feeling, I don't know, let's say I feel really ugly. I look in the mirror and all I see are like all the imperfections. Doesn't matter how much my lovely partner Steve tells me I'm beautiful, tells me all the nice things about me. If I don't want to listen to them, like, he cannot make me feel better. So the same is then true of the other way around. And once we accept that our ways of thinking and feeling are ours, they are ours to own, whoo, that's a game changer. Because how different does it feel to say, he did this and I chose to feel really upset about that? Ooh, do I want to keep making that choice to feel upset? Do I want to give him or her that power to influence the way that I feel in that way? No, I don't. I want to take that back for myself. Okay, I acknowledge that they've said this or done this. I acknowledge that my initial response was to feel like this, but also it is well within my gift to change the way that I think and feel and the way that I'm going to react to what they've said.
Yeah, but it's not to take those feelings away as well, because if you feel like that, you know, you got you've got the choice, as you say, like, to feel like that. And I remember, so I found one of the lads I was dating in bed with another woman, and he'd intentionally kind of set that up for me to find him and for him to hurt me. And some people never get over that. I decided to have a pity party for a week, be pure miserable, eat whatever I wanted to, cry as much as I needed to, like, completely withdraw from everybody or be at the centre of it, depending what I was needing at that time. But then after that, I promised myself that once I'd kind of got all these emotions out and just done whatever I needed to do, I was going to be okay. Because if I'm not going to be upset about this in 6 months' time, why am I allowing myself to be upset about it in 2 weeks' time? So I gave myself a week.
And, you know, I think that is part of the beauty and privilege of the human experience, that we have this full spectrum of emotions that we are able to experience. And one of the things that I hate to see, like, in the online world, there is so much toxic positivity, this idea of like good vibes only, and, you know, like, you can't cry about things, you can't feel sore about something, you can't feel hurt. No, rubbish. Like, if you want to cry,
angry.
yeah, you can't be angry. Yeah, if you want to cry about it, then you cry about it. Absolutely, you're totally right. Yeah, I don't mean in terms of like just then switching off all negativity. You know, I think that is.
But it's the blame, isn't it? So I wasn't blaming him. I was now choosing to go through this process, taking responsibility for how long that lasted. I wasn't putting it on him.
Yep.
To then come and rescue me and make me feel good about myself. It was all on me. I am deciding to go through this cycle of a week.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great way to tackle it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do wish I'd broke something. Or actually, what I do wish I'd done is taken the bottom of the kettle. I saw that on a TikTok. Someone was like, pet. I was like, oh my gosh, that is genius. It's like, today she did not choose violence, but she chose pettiness. I wish I had done that. That's my only regret. I don't have many regrets in life, but that is one of them.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant that you didn't take the bottom of the kettle.
How infuriating.
I mean, that would be.
Should we end
so
on that
annoying.
note?
I think so. Although,
let me check my notes.
Before we end,
yes,
we said that as part of this podcast, we always wanted to try and give sort of a personal and professional example of how it is that you can actually use this to go forward. So if I start with sort of on a personal note.
Yeah, go for it.
And a couple of things actually come up for me, so I'm going to break the rules already on episode 1.
No stress, no pressure.
Sorry, Jenna.
No consistency.
No consistency. The consistency will be there, because the first thing, the first one is sort of just to say that I've then taken these and not just see these anymore as principles on a piece of paper. These are now what I call my 3 rules for life. So these are things that I consciously try to live. And it is a conscious effort, by the way. These principles can take years to actually fully wrap your head around. Okayness in particular is one that people really come back to. So as long as you can sort of think, okay, yeah, I think I can get on board with these, I want to learn more about them, then you'll love the rest of the podcast episodes, because TA could really be the theory for you. If, at first glance, you're like, absolutely not, cannot get on board with this, then you're probably going to really struggle to, or possibly going to struggle to get on board with all the other ideas that follow from TA. But, so personal example of okayness, think about, you've had a really bad day. It feels like all the stress is just too much. Workload's piling up. You find yourself snapping at the kids, and you just feel like you're failing at everything. But underneath all that, underneath all those rubbish things that are happening, you are still okay, and you can always return back to that position of, I'm okay. Yeah, so that's the example from me.
And I think as well, that you've touched on it with toxic positivity. It's not that you're happy all the time.
Nope.
It's not that you're smiling and everybody else thinks that their perception of okay. It's not that, is it? It's not that, how is everything? Oh, I'm okay. It's, I'm okay within me and myself. There might be stuff going on, there might be stuff happening, but ultimately I'm okay. And it's that valuing of self and valuing of sometimes situations as well. So I had surgery in September. I had such a heavy workload since September, but struggled to get back into it because even pushing a Hoover was oh my gosh, it was so hard to push a Hoover and things like that. And where am I going with this? Give me 2 seconds. Okay, I'm okay.
It'll come back to you.
It will. We'll rewind, fast forward the... where am I going with this? Oh yeah, that was it. And I was aware that and also we've had the work in the kitchen as well, so we've not had a cooker. I was aware that I wasn't going to be able to eat as healthily as I'd like to, but also being okay with that, not giving myself a hard time, just knowing that this was kind of like temporary, situational. I'm still okay. I'm not a failure. I'm not a bad person. I know that I've got all these TikToks telling me to do 150 million sit-ups before I have my avocado on toast, but I'm still okay. And I'm okay right here, right now, and I'm present in the here and now. I'm acknowledging that, I've had the surgery, we've got the cooker not in the... we had the cooker, we had to walk past it every day. It just wasn't plumbed in or plugged in or whatever you do with it. But it's okay. And then once everything's sorted, I can then go on to the next step. And then I can make progress. So I guess valuing where you are, the here and the now, the present, and not giving yourself too much of a hard time.
And just really briefly, flipping that as well to other people. When other people are in you know, you see them, they're really struggling, they're having a really difficult situation. They haven't suddenly lost their ability to think for themselves. They don't need you to dive in, sort everything out for them, make everything better. You can be there. You can still support people when they're in a difficult time, but do it from a different approach. What do you need right now? How can I help you? You know, what would be really useful to help you get through this? As opposed to sort of disempowering them and taking away that ability to think.
Yeah. And one of the things that we will cover is the drama triangle, winners triangle, empowerment. And I love that. And that's what it's made me think of. And I'm not going to talk about it too much. We'll just kind of hook you in with that one.
Come back for more.
Yeah, because I love it. So what are we asking people this week to think about? What can people take on board?
So just spend some time reflecting on those 3 core principles. How do they land with you? Is there any that you sort of are having difficulty with? Do any resonate more than the others? And is there someone that you'd like to start? You know, if you think about you want to actually make a change, then they've got to stop being principles in a book. They've got to stop just being words on a piece of paper. They have to be things that you adopt. So what would you like to adopt first?
And sometimes that's just taking a step back and seeing your life from a different perspective. And it's almost like, you know, when in these Matrix type films where everything's whizzing around and they like just pause it and you can observe it from a different perspective. And I do think you need that step back, because if you're in it and you can't always see these things. So yeah, just observing, just spend a bit of time observing. Perfect. There we go. Is that end of part 1?
End of part 1.
End of episode 1. Fantastic. Well, we got through it.
Even with
I didn't break anything.
The camera turned itself off.
Oh, no.
But you would never know from watching, would you? We are quite the professionals, Gemma.
So we've had the camera break, the heating turn off, the camera turn off, down with the shelf. But we keep on going. We keep on trucking. And we'll see you next week.
See you again.